All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and today I have a very special episode for you guys. If you recall, for Obi-Wan, I did a roundtable episode where I had friends and Mark of Balance community members come on and give their takes on the series, and I wanted to bring that back for the Ahsoka series since Ahsoka is such an important character to so many of you and so many Star Wars fans all over the world. So wanted to give you guys a platform to talk about your thoughts overall, your predictions, your theories, and I'm really excited that I was able to get 12 guests on this episode. I think I had 12 last time for Obi-Wan, and I probably could have had more, and if I missed you this time around, I promise to try and work you into another one in the future. But I was excited to get new guests, returning guests. It was a really good melting pot of opinions, and overall, I just want to say that these type of episodes are so reinvigorating for me because I know there's so many different opinions in Star Wars and a lot of things that people disagree on, but I think hearing the love or criticisms that people have from both sides of the series is really healthy for our fan base. And the other thing is really invigorating to me is that you guys are just so good on the microphone. I know you guys don't think you are sometimes and people don't like hearing themselves talk, but I've done this for over 100 episodes and been podcasting for over 2.5 years. And I know for a fact if I had not done this and someone asked me to come on their podcast, I'd be so nervous. So I think you guys are so incredible and so eloquent in the way you put things. And even though I asked similar questions to all these different guests, I had so many different types of conversations and they went in so many cool and interesting directions and things that I hadn't even thought about. So that made this a lot of fun for me as well. So without further ado, I will shut up and let you guys enjoy the episode. All right, what's up, Justin? Welcome back to the podcast. Good to see you. I know we've been talking every couple weeks about Ahsoka and kind of your updates when you watch it during work. So happy to have you back on, and let's hear your overall thoughts on the Ahsoka series.
All right, just real quick, great series. The fans are terrible because everyone wants to spoil it the night that the episode comes out.
Yeah, yeah. Even the Star Wars page was posting spoilers like the day after.
Yeah, I think I got it to episode 5 or 6, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna avoid Twitter. I'm gonna avoid Instagram, and I went to open a new tab on my computer, and it was like, talk about Ezra's new lightsaber color, and I was like, no.
Oh, so how many times did you get stuff spoiled? Because I felt like when Anakin was on, you got that spoiled too.
Four episodes, yes.
Four? Oh my God, the whole show.
Yeah, not too bad. Hayden Christensen got spoiled, and then Ezra got spoiled, and then Ezra with the lightsaber got spoiled.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then obviously Thrawn, but
I guess you still like the show though, so that's good.
Yeah.
Good.
Still got the chills when everything happened.
What were some of your favorite moments from the show?
Obviously Hayden Christensen. You can't top that.
Yeah.
Like everyone's gonna call it a fan service, but I mean, isn't that what the fans want? Like everyone's gonna complain about something or something else, but
yeah,
I think everyone was pretty on board with that.
Yeah, it's such an important piece of Ahsoka story. You had to tell it. So, being like an animation fan, we always talk about Clone Wars, and I think you just finished rewatching Rebels, right, recently?
Yep, and I started Clone Wars again.
Nice. just a reoccurring cycle, just
might as well. Yeah.
Back to back to back. So, what did you think of the transition from animation to live action and seeing all these characters be portrayed by someone else and in live action?
I thought it was cool. I think they had a nice balance, picking which characters should stay as the voice actor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thrawn, Zeb is complete CGI, and that was in Mandalorian. I think Ezra was perfectly casted. He did a great job. Everyone was introduced to who Ahsoka was being played by a couple years ago.
Right.
So that's nothing new to get used to. I think Sabine was the biggest one that everyone had an issue with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough. I mean, Sabine is every character has their own little traits that you can't quite get from the animation and the live action, but I think they did a really good job. And it's cool to see everybody.
We've been talking a lot about a certain someone, a certain new character. So, so I'd love to have you share your thoughts on not only Baylan Skull, but Shin Hati, as you would call it.
Yeah, I mean, you have the Inquisitors from Rebels and the Inquisitor that showed up in the Kenobi show, and you're like, oh, they're just Inquisitors. They fell to the dark side, former Jedi, whatever. But I think Baylan and Shin were something different.
Mm-hmm.
So it was definitely a different take on not having Inquisitors, but having the dark side being used. Because I wouldn't necessarily call them Sith.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and you could feel from Balin throughout the show, and especially that one episode when he was asked about the Jedi Order, that he misses the idea of it. So he didn't just go full Sith. He found his own path outside of the Jedi Order, outside of Sith, and I think that was just like really well done.
Yeah, yeah. I thought they were such great additions, and they have some cliffhangers at the end for both of their characters, especially the Mortis statues. What did you think about that when that was revealed at the end?
That got spoiled for me.
Oh my god!
I was
Jesus.
it was really quick, but I knew exactly what it was right when I saw it. I have to go back and watch that Clone Wars arc again
Yeah,
to fully appreciate it, because I think there was a different take on it from Clone Wars to Rebels, because they weren't in Rebels as characters, but I feel like they played a bigger role in Rebels than they did in Clone Wars.
yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, in Rebels they were like the key to the world between worlds, but in Clone Wars they were just this theoretical arc that happened, but you don't know if it actually happened because like
Yeah,
all the characters just like woke back up on the ship and they're like, "Where were you guys? You were gone for a couple seconds." They're like, "We've been gone for days. What the? What are you talking about?" So, yeah, that's such a good point, and yeah, it's interesting to see where they go with that. And Thrawn. So what did you think about Thrawn? His portrayal. I know you like the voice actor coming in live action. What did you think about Thrawn? His tactics, all that.
I think everyone forgot what Thrawn was to begin with and how long they've actually been stranded. Because when you're first introduced to Thrawn, he's fighting those droids. I can't remember the name of them, but he's fighting those droids, and he's this like jacked but very calm individual who's very everything's perfectly down to the detail. And then you get to Ahsoka, and he's obviously aged a good amount. He's not going to be that same character,
Hmm.
but he still has that clean, put together calmness of him.
Yeah,
And I think the live action version, you were able to see more emotion from him, which is something you didn't get a lot of in Rebels.
yeah, I noticed
You know,
that
there were a
too.
few times in Rebels that he lost his temper with other Imperials because he's not fully for the Empire. Like, he's obviously trying to find his own way. But I think being able to see more of his emotion in his character's face, even if you don't hear it in his voice, getting to see that in his character's face in live action is super cool.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I noticed it right away when he first came on the screen. Like he didn't smile, I don't think at all in Rebels, and I think the first like scene he's in this, he's like excited. He's like, "Yes, I'm getting out of here," and he smiles. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a new
Yeah.
thing for Thrawn. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
And then his reaction when he learns who Ahsoka's master is. Like,
He's like, "Excuse me."
what? What? What?
It's a who? Yeah. Any exciting theories or what you're looking forward to most with all of the cliffhangers for a season 2 or movies? And we can end on that.
I saw something this morning saying that the next Tales of the Jedi would be Balin's Skull.
Mm.
I think that would be an interesting take to get him out of the Ahsoka series, get him out of live action,
Yeah.
because to honor Ray Stevenson rather than recasting, at least find someone that can match that voice and that tone and
Okay.
go with the animated side of it. I think Shin is going to continually be pulled back to the light.
Yeah. I think they're definitely like hinting that, she might take Ahsoka's hand next time she offers it or something like that. Yeah. That Tales of the Jedi is interesting. So you mean like Tales of the Jedi like from this moment on, not like an origin story of
Yeah,
Balin?
from moment on.
Oh, okay. Okay, I didn't know if you meant like an origin story of like what happened to Order 66 with him and then this, but
Oh yeah, I mean,
that'd be
obviously,
cool
but
too.
yeah, I think maybe they could do it like they did with Ahsoka, where they showed the like beginning of Ahsoka, like when she was a baby, and then they
Yeah.
have like, after everything.
Hmm.
But without Ray Stevenson, obviously, it's difficult to not
Yeah.
like tarnish the character.
Yeah, it's so hard. But yeah, no, that's good. I like having that, and I know we'll probably keep talking about theories 'cause I know you're a big YouTube Easter egg and theory guy. So keep me updated on all the crazy ones because you sent me some ones. I'm like
Absolutely.
that's pretty wild, but I don't know if they'll do that. But Justin, thank you for coming on. Wish we could talk longer, but appreciate you coming back on the podcast and hope you had a good time.
Yeah, of course. Always excited to get on here and talk Star Wars with you.
All right, Dylan, welcome back to the podcast. Excited to talk to you about Ahsoka today. I know we missed you the first time around on the Obi-Wan Roundtable, but excited to get you on this time and hear what you thought of Ahsoka overall, being such a huge Clone Wars fan, animation fan, and now seeing these characters come to life.
Oh, thanks for having me, Mark. And it's it's really interesting to see characters from the animation side come more into live action. But for someone like, you and me who've seen everything and like my girlfriend has only seen Clone Wars. So when we started it, she was a little bit confused. I'm like, all right, let's watch a summary of Rebels because I mean, I get the first two episodes, they do a okay job summing up why you should care about Sabine and Ahsoka. But she's like, all right, well, who's Thrawn in this? So somebody like that, I think, might have had a little bit of trouble getting into Ahsoka. But somebody like me, I'm like, I'm here, I'm ready. And yeah, I didn't like Rebels as much as I liked Clone Wars, but I wanted to see how it ends, and I really liked Ahsoka. I like it more now that it's over and I can watch it all in a chunk
Hmm.
because my biggest gripe with it was like it started off with an hour, then it was 45 minutes, then it was 28 minutes. I'm like, come on, why is it so hard for Star Wars to pump out an hour every week like Game of Thrones or Marvel?
Yeah.
I don't. It's always my biggest gripe with all their shows is that. But now it's done and you can binge it. I like it more than I when I was watching it. I was like, I'd watch an episode. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I liked it, but like, I didn't feel satisfied. I'm like, where's the ending? But
Hmm.
overall, I really enjoyed it. Obviously my favorite part was the Clone Wars flashback. I think that's like top three moments of Star Wars ever for me personally.
Wow.
I couldn't believe when I saw that.
I mean, yeah, we were such big fans of Clone Wars back in high school, and we would always talk about the clones, and now we see them in live action a lot more, especially like Phase 2 and Phase 3 clones, and seeing Rex and Tamara Morrison do the voice for him. It was all really cool because in the prequels we just had the CGI clones, so
Yeah.
this is awesome.
It's like mind blowing to like have to see that like all these years later, like the real costumes and seeing Captain Rex, like love Captain Rex, seeing him in person, like I'm like, oh, there he is. I felt like a kid again to see my boy, and he
Yeah,
had a line.
he did have what do you say? Come on, Commander, or
Come
something
on,
like
let's go.
that.
When I spoke, yes.
Yes, he said something. Since this was a continuation of Rebels, and I know you said you weren't a big fan, what did you think about Thrawn coming into live action? How do you think they did that?
Well, Thrawn was one of my positive parts of Rebels because he's a different type of like Imperial that like thinks and cares about art. So it's not like you're versing some regular like Imperial
Joe
leader. He's
Schmo,
different.
yeah.
Yeah, some Joe Schmo. It's really interesting to see his plan, how he talked to his people. He's like, all right, send out the two TIE fighters. That's it. That's
Hmm.
all we need because we need to leave. It's very refreshing to see a villain that thinks. Because I always go back to like to General Hux and how he was like not imposing and like very much not what I wanted to see in a Star Wars villain. So Thrawn is like the exact opposite of that. Very calm and collective. I love how he talks.
Yeah.
And I like the connection because in the Thrawn books, I haven't read them, but I always watch the summaries.
Hmm.
Like I knew that he worked with Anakin during the Clone Wars, and like he worked with Vader. So him then fighting Ahsoka's Anakin's apprentice, I thought was really meaningful because he's like, oh, I know her master, and this she's not to be trifled with.
As a huge book fan, I was so excited that they actually brought in that deep cut because I'm like, this is pretty significant stuff, and I'm like, Ahsoka's here. I'm like, they gotta touch on this, and yeah, it looks like at the end it was so great when he was just like, I beat you, I knew your master, I know you now. So I'm excited for future confrontation between those two.
Yeah,
What did
I
you?
was
Yeah, go
scared.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was scared at the end of the. I thought they were going to beat him. I'm like, oh my god, he just leave, please.
Yeah.
This it needs to be. I'm a huge fan of when the heroes lose, like Infinity War, like where it just ends like the hero's law. I think it's very like realistic, and it just is a more satisfying ending for the season to be
Hmm.
like, oh god, like they lost, now what? So
Yeah.
I was very happy that he actually won, he left, and now I love all this setup for like the Mandoverse and stuff. Now Thrawn made it back, and he's on Dathomir. Who knows what he's gonna do?
I know, yeah, there's so many cool threads open. And what did you think of the new characters, Shin and Balin?
I love
really the
them.
new characters for this.
Loved them.
Yeah.
It's such a shame that Ray Stevenson passed away before this aired because he is one of like the best new characters that Disney has come up with. His like imposingness, like how he talks,
Hmm.
very old school, like medieval knight kind of vibes.
Yeah.
I was scared, like going into the series knowing that he had passed away. I'm like, I wonder, did they wrap up his story in one season, or is there more? Obviously, now we know that there's a bit of a
Hmm.
cliffhanger. So now I'm in the camp of recast because the character I think is really, really worth it. Like, I want to see what was he doing? Like we showed up with the Mortis statues. Like
Yeah,
I like when Star Wars getting all like fantasy and like experimental.
sure.
But that might alienate a few fans. Like I don't know if my dad might watch that and go, "Who was that?" Or
Yeah,
someone like me, I'm like, "There it is, the Mortis statues. Oh my god!"
I know. I was gonna say like Mortis in live action is such a bold move.
Yeah.
Because even us as huge fans still don't even know what Mortis was. Like
Yeah.
it was so like random, and we were just like, "What is this? I love it, but what is going on?"
Yeah, it was a
And
big
yeah,
risk that I thought they weren't gonna do because I was talking to my friends. I'm like, oh, maybe he's looking for like Mortis stuff, and I'm like, oh, I guess they didn't go that direction. And then the last episode, oh my god, they
they
did!
went that
There it
direction.
is.
Yeah, they definitely went that direction. So yeah, that's a lot of exciting stuff set up, and yeah, I guess what are you most looking forward to outside of Mortis in season 2 or a movie, wherever they continue this story?
I am now interested with because my biggest problem with the sequels was they didn't take the threat of the Empire's Return First Order seriously, and Senator I forget his last
Xiono,
name.
yeah, the
Yeah,
new
from
guy. Yeah,
Hosnian Prime.
yeah,
He was like everything that is wrong with the New Republic, and I want to see him be wrong because
yeah.
that's the whole reason why they call the Resistance. Like they didn't believe anybody, and like it's so infuriating to know that they are right. Like Thrawn is back. Like there is the Shadow Council planning things,
Hmm.
and I'm just excited to see the sequel trilogy get a better setup, much like how Clone Wars fixed
Yeah.
episode 2 and 3 for me.
Mhm.
I'm enjoying the setup of the sequels that'll hopefully make me enjoy. Yeah, they're okay. I like them, but this is making it much more like I'm really enjoying the setup of the sequels a lot.
Yeah,
This era is pretty cool.
for sure. Yeah, they're doing a lot of going back and trying to fix the sequels, even with like Bad Batch and stuff like that,
Yeah,
with Project like,
and
Necromancer and all that
yeah,
stuff. So
yeah. And the
yeah,
other Hux, General Hux's
Ye-
father, he was there. Like it's just these little connections, little dots. Like I think that's what we're working towards
yeah,
the actual. This is what happened. And I hope Thrawn is like the big bad of this era.
yeah. And the rise of the First Order feels
Yeah.
earned at the beginning of Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Well, Dylan, this has been fantastic. Glad to have got you on a roundtable episode. Hope you had a good time. Thank you again for taking the time and talking
Oh,
Ahsoka
yes.
with me.
Oh, absolutely. Between you and me, the table I'm at right now has corners. It's not round, but we can pretend it's round.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks, Dylan.
No problem.
All right, hello guys. Thanks for joining. I'm joined by Chris, who has been on the podcast before, friend of the show, and his fiance Victoria, who is a huge Ahsoka fan that I've been told. So I'm excited to hear your guys' thoughts on the Ahsoka series. Chris, I know you literally just finished the finale, so excited to hear what you guys have to say about the show overall. And the floor is yours, Chris, Victoria, whoever wants to start.
Thank you for having us. I want to start off with the show was Dave Filoni, just like like he nailed it. He absolutely nailed it.
He always nails it.
I thought it was amazing.
Sorry, that episode, I think it's episode 4, maybe 5, her and Anakin together again was probably the best piece of Star Wars content I've ever seen. So
Wow. Big praise.
that's my thoughts.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely the high point of the season for me. How did you feel with the transition from animation to live action? Because I know that was something I was a little bit hesitant going into this season. How did that pan out for you guys?
I mean, Rosario Dawson's perfect. I think she even gave some interviews where she was like, I went back and watched the Clone Wars and watched, I don't know if she watched Rebels or not, but she's got all of the mannerisms down pat, the smirks, the like low-key cockiness of Ahsoka, just as now a master herself has been. I think the transition was perfect, especially aging her was.
Yeah.
It made it more palatable, I think, for people that are like longtime Star Wars fans.
Yeah, I thought speaking for the transition, I thought the Purrgil. I love the Purrgil.
Oh my god!
I thought it was awesome. Like it was really well done.
The Purrgil coming out of hyperspace,
Very majestic.
so cool.
I was
Right.
gonna say they did such a good job with the Purgle, especially that scene at the end of that episode you mentioned, Victoria, where they take the Purgle into hyperspace and go to the new galaxy. I thought that was so
Yeah.
beautifully done.
It was
And
amazing.
yeah, I think it's funny because when I initially watched Rebels, I don't know if you guys thought the same thing when you watched Rebels, but I thought the Purgle were like kind of not a joke, but it was kind of funny that there was these like space whales and
Yeah.
in the middle of just like space just eating like dust and gasoline in like
Yeah.
Rebels, and now they're like this integral part of the Star Wars galaxy. So
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. How did you guys feel about Anakin making his return with Hayden Christensen? You know, in Obi-Wan we only saw a little bit of it and it was behind a mask, but here it's just full on Revenge of the Sith Anakin.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was I thought they de-aged him really well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I thought like his mannerisms were I feel like he picked up the Clone Wars Anakin like and mixed his own like perfectly.
I think ever since we knew they were going to do a live action Ahsoka, and then got wind that she was going to appear for the first time in The Mandalorian, it was like everybody held their breath for like her being reunited in some way with Anakin, whether it be, you know, through the Force, which it was, and they made it lived up to the expectation, at least that I had, of them being back together again. And I was a wreck. I wept. I think we all did. So
yeah,
good.
it was so nice to see her just like accept, you know, who he was finally, instead of blaming him and what he might have passed on to her. She was just like, no, I remember how great my master was and all the great things he taught me. So absolutely, that was such a beautiful piece of Star Wars. More broadly in Rebels, are you guys bigger fans of Clone Wars or Rebels, first of all?
I'd say Clone Wars.
I say Clone Wars, not the
Rebels is great too.
Rebels
Yes. No,
But
we're not saying we don't.
Yeah.
Clone Wars was just fantastic.
Yeah.
Especially obviously the final season.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Clone Wars was like so integral to the reason that Rebels was so great, between Ahsoka being involved and Mandalore being such a big piece of it. So how did you feel about the transition for the Rebels characters like Sabine and Ezra showing up? Did you enjoy them as much as Ahsoka's transition?
I thought Ezra's portrayal was great.
Perfect.
He was awesome.
I found at first Sabine I wasn't crazy about, and then I remembered I wasn't terribly crazy about her in Rebels either. Just her character, you know, like there are just some characters that don't speak to you. But she's definitely grown on me a lot more in the last few episodes, especially in the finale.
Hu Yang grew the most on me. I love Hu Yang.
Same. I wasn't feeling it at first, and now I died for Hu Yang. So.
Yeah, Hu Yang was like such a nice surprise because he was such a small piece of Clone Wars in like a small little arc, and I feel like a lot of people came away from the show and were like, he was a standout and like one of their favorite droid characters. And it was nice to just see him be very like empathetic to the master and apprentice relationship. One more character we haven't talked about is Thrawn finally making his debut in live action. We had the same voice actor carry over. What did you guys think of Thrawn? Have you read any of the Thrawn books? What were your expectations for this larger than life villain?
I've not. I don't think either of us have read the Thrawn books.
No.
I did love that his voice was the same, and it's just he's still the same cold, calculated. You know.
Yeah, bastard.
Yeah, everything's like it's like a game. It's like
he's
a game
like hasn't skipped a beat.
Yeah.
He's like ready to go back and get back to work.
And he's even more like he was even more practical and I feel like as soon as he found out that Anakin was Ahsoka's master, he was like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
like,
game on.
Yeah, it's I thought it was great. And I thought actually he looked pretty good blue.
I did too. I thought so too.
Right, yeah, they could have made him look like the Na'vi from Avatar, but I think he actually looks good on his own. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the new characters introduced, Shin and Baylan. Obviously, we lost Ray Stevenson, unfortunately, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts on these very mysterious characters that I think we don't get a lot of this season, but I think they make a big impact. So what did you guys think of those two?
I think I was saying Victoria, like he's the most like compelling Sith character that we've had in like I think in a while. I don't know. It just he had such like a presence on screen. He was just
a force.
Like a mountain of yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sad to hear that he has passed. But yeah, to have two Jedi trained Sith master and apprentice, awesome. But actually, and I can't take credit for this, a friend of mine pointed out that Balon Skull and Hati are in Norse mythology, the wolves that ate the sun and the moon, and their howlers coordinated colors with their respective Norse wolf gods. And I don't know how I missed that because I love Norse mythology, but then when she said that, I was like, oh my, genius. Genius. I love the howlers. They were, such great Star Wars creatures. But that was my favorite thing I've learned so far.
We knew Dave Filoni would have to sneak in wolf iconography into the series somehow. So I think that was such a great little piece of it. At the end of the season, we get a lot of loose threads, a lot of exciting prospects for the future. Obviously, you guys have seen Clone Wars. What do you guys think of this quest for Balon and seeing the Mortis gods in statue form? Finally, what are your theories? What came to mind when you saw that?
Honestly, I have no theories. I was just like I was blown away that
you haven't really had as much time to think about it.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
To be fair, I don't have any theories either. Well, maybe you might.
But oh my god! As soon as he like early on when he was hinting that that he was like felt like a calling through the force or whatever that he knew he was supposed to be here. I was running through my mind about like what could be this primordial, and obviously now it makes sense that it's the Mortis gods. But how are they gonna do it without him though? That's the thing.
I know. I don't even know.
Yeah, there's theories that he'll either be recast or they'll do some sort of mask or like changing of his face so that like there's a reason that we don't see him anymore, and then the voice can kind of match it. But again, it's hard to bring what Ray brought to the role, and it's hard to theorize about the Mortis gods like you guys said because they're so nebulous, and even the Mortis arc in Clone Wars, I feel like we still don't understand what happened there.
So. No, I know.
Completely 100% agree. We know he was the chosen one, but he took the wrong path, so we don't know what he was actually destined for. So what is going to happen?
And they all died. I mean, they killed all the gods. So it's like, what could
what are we doing here?
Yeah. So I just want to end off on this. What are you looking forward to most in the next phase of this? Whether it's in a season 2 or if it's a movie from Dave Filoni, what are you most excited for in the future with Thrawn now back in the galaxy and Sabine and Ahsoka stranded?
I would love to honestly. I hadn't even thought of it, but I would love to have a Thrawn movie with Dave Filoni, like pulling the strings. I enjoyed the sequel trilogy, I guess, just because it was Star Wars, but like they weren't, they're not my favorites. But like I feel like we haven't ever had really, really, really good movies since Rogue One, and it'd be really cool to see like kind of on the grand scale that Thrawn would be, and that ship is so cool. The jump right. Is so cool.
So you're saying a centrally Thrawn focused movie, just like Thrawn as the main character.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
The main antagonist.
Very cool. How about you, Victoria?
I think ever since Clone Wars, the Witches of Dathomir is just one of the coolest concepts in Star Wars because it's just so different. And I remember saying like I cannot wait for them to do a live action adaptation of this planet and these people and their culture, and then now it's happening. So I hope there's a lot more of that in the future because they are so cool. That's one of my favorite storylines for sure.
Yeah, it is really great that they've had this whole life after Clone Wars. Like, I mean, in the Jedi Survivor and Jedi Fallen Order games, like Marin is such a big character, and now they're bringing people back to life. We're having a base of operations on Dathomir. Like, I definitely agree. Like, the Night Sisters are like such a cool piece of Star Wars going forward. But This has been really great, guys. I wish we
Hold
could
on,
go
hold on, Mark.
longer. Oh, yes,
Oh,
yes.
Before we go, in true, I got it.
Let me see. Let me
Yeah,
see what we
no
got.
On brand for the theme of the.
Oh, beautiful.
I don't know where the blades are, but
It's okay. Just the hills will do.
there they are.
Oh my gosh. Wait, let me get a screenshot of this bad boy for the
Yeah,
post.
you're
Oh, get in there, Chris. You can fit up
good.
there. Yeah, there you go. Awesome. Let me make sure I got it for you guys. That's awesome.
I've heard they don't make these anymore. They actually started making her Clone Wars sabers. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I might have one of the only couple 100,000, I bet. But
Hell yeah. Yeah, and then you can just collect her Clone Wars sabers, and then you'll have it all.
all Ahsoka content.
Awesome. Well, I wish we could keep talking on this, guys, but this has been like a lot of fun, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this conversation.
Oh yeah.
So thank you again for taking the time.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Mark.
Of course. I'll have you on for a Star Wars Story interview, Victoria. Definitely will
Okay,
be happening
cool.
soon.
I can't wait. I look forward to it.
Thank you, guys.
Right. Bye, Mark.
See you, Mark.
All right, Zach, thanks for coming on and welcome to the podcast. We know each other through mutual friends, and they told me you were a big Star Wars guy, and we immediately hit it off when we started talking about, Clone Wars and Rebels and everything Star Wars. So excited to have you on the podcast. Looking forward to future podcast episodes with you about your Star Wars story. But today we are talking about Ahsoka. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on the series overall, and especially about your experience seeing it in the movie theater. You were able to go to the special mid-season movie theater premiere, which was the best episode of the entire season. So I want to hear all about it and your thoughts on the show overall.
Cool. Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it. So I would say just in general, I was really excited because this was essentially just Rebels, season 5, and I think they did a really good job with most of the characters translating them from animation to live action. I think my favorite was probably Ezra. I think they nailed him, just from his comedy to just his mannerisms. I think the actor did a phenomenal job.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were doing some clever things with Ahsoka. Kind of bringing her into live action. We've seen her, a few times now already in the Mandoverse. And I think in the beginning when she was introduced, she didn't translate as well as I had hoped, though I think she kind of found her footing a little bit more in this series. And I think they did that kind of intentionally, so people who hadn't watched the animated shows could kind of, feel like there was growth with her character.
Yeah.
And then, I think it's kind of similar with Sabine. I think the actress did a really good job, though I think in the beginning, some of the introduction stumbled a little bit, but I think by the end, I think they made some interesting choices with where they're taking her character, the gap between like her training. I think there was some confusion around that. So I watched it with my partner who hadn't watched Rebels. So I think it was kind of interesting, me having the background from Rebels and her not kind of comparing notes, if you will, about our thoughts for the characters.
Yeah, it was interesting to see people react who hadn't seen Rebels, because there was so much backstory that we had, but then there was also things like Ahsoka and Sabine's relationship, which we had no backstory of. Like, that was new for everyone.
Right.
And I think a lot of people were like, should we know about this? And we're like, no, this is new.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely agree that, seeing the growth of those characters was good, because I think in the beginning it was a bit of a rocky start. What did you think about Thrawn being brought into live action? Do you think they got his character right? Did you like Lars's portrayal of him?
I'm really happy that Lars is doing it, particularly for the voice. I think initially when we saw him in the trailer, I had similar opinions to him as I had with the Grand Inquisitor in Obi-Wan. Like, the translation looked a little funky, but then you have to kind of consider Rebels' exaggerated animation style. So I think he does look kind of menacing, and the voice is half of that
Carries, yeah.
So I think I was really happy for that. And even like, I can't remember, I think it was the last episode or the penultimate episode, just his facial reactions I think were really good, especially like when he was like nervous and like something's gonna go his way. So I think that was really cool seeing it in live action. I'm excited to see where his character goes.
hmm And so I want to touch on the big episode 5 that you saw in the theater. How did you find out? How did you know that the theater was having it? And like, what was the experience? Was it like a movie? You just kind of like bought a ticket, you walked in, or did they have like some fanfare there for you?
So I work from home, so I happened to be on Instagram, like I think 2 minutes after Star Wars had posted about it on Instagram, and I had signed up for, I think, so they did the ticket release through GoFobo, and had seen like another event through GoFobo, so I'd already had an account, so like the sign up was really quick, and you were able to reserve 2 tickets. You had to show up early, so they overbooked the theater. So I showed up like an hour. I showed up like an hour and a half or 2 hours early. It was like 40 minutes away from me. I was nervous even showing up that early that I wasn't going to get into the theater. I was
Wow.
probably like 150th in line. So we just waited in line for the 2 hours, and it felt like waiting in Disney for a ride. And
Yeah.
people were dressed up, people had shirts on. I thought it was really cool just seeing the age range of people. There was people with their young children, and then there was individuals who were much older, like our parents' age or even grandparents' age. So I thought that was like really cool to see. And then about like 20 minutes before the movie, they let us into the theater. Everyone got a voucher for free popcorn and drink.
Nice.
And we got posters at the end, and then the energy in the theater was it was unmatched. It was comparable to when I saw Endgame and
Wow.
Infinity War in the theater. Like everyone there, like no one was there who didn't know what was going on before ever. Like I was talking to the person next to me about Rebels beforehand. Like everyone there, like knew Ahsoka through Clone Wars. It was like definitely like this old like journey everyone kind of had gone through, and it was kind of cool seeing the age range of people. Even the older fans kind of knew what was up with Ahsoka, and that was cool to
Yeah,
see.
that's so cool to hear like the older fans had watched the animation and they'd come and then there was just people like you and just people that just enjoy all the shows and yeah, I can only imagine that energy with Hayden Christensen coming on in the Revenge of the Sith outfit and then having
Yeah.
such a like transformative episode with, Clone Wars flashbacks and everything. Like was there cheering? Were people like excited like that or could you just kind of like feel the energy?
No, yeah, people were cheering. I mean, even from like the first 2 minutes when he says, "Hey, Snips," like it was
Yeah.
just like it was just cheering, and then there was lots of like oohing and eyeing when there was the flashes of him between Hayden between Anakin and Vader. Every emotion that you were feeling when you were watching at home, people were just audibly expressing in the theater.
That's awesome. And it sounds like it was an enormous theater, like a huge IMAX kind of screen.
It was a standard theater because I think
Okay.
at this movie theater they were able to fit more seats than this theater had a relatively small IMAX. So
Okay.
it was standard. So that was like the only disappointing thing. But honestly, the energy of the
Yeah.
people in there made up for. I mean, and it was a huge screen, so I
Yeah.
couldn't really complain.
For sure. Yeah. I hope they do that more for future Star Wars project. I think that's such a cool idea. And I would love to see some of these shows in the theater. The last thing
Yeah.
I want to touch on is, the ending. We have all these open threads and we have the Mortis gods introduced. What did you think of Balin and Shin, these new characters that were introduced in the show, and where do you think their stories are going?
I really loved Ray's character Balin, and it's really a shame we're not gonna see him carried on. I know there's a lot of discourse of like, are they gonna write his character off? Are they gonna recast it? I mean, I think they kind of have to recast it. I hope they recast it because I think it's such an interesting character, and it's kind of heading in the direction of Star Wars that we've never seen in live action, and that we've kind of only touched on in animation. So I'm excited to see where that goes. Truth be told, I need to go back and I think rewatch the Mortis arc. I
Yeah.
might go watch and just rewatch all of Clone Wars again because it's been so long.
Yeah.
So I think I remembered enough to kind of see where I think they're going, and I'm excited to kind of go back and I've read a few theories, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to see where it goes. And then with Shin's character, I'm interested to see how they tie her into, I think there's going to probably be something with her and Ahsoka and Sabine, and
Yeah, I think even if you go back to rewatch Mortis, I feel like even when I still go back and rewatch it, I'm still confused and I still think of
Yeah.
like new theories and like what even happened. So, I mean, good luck on the rewatch, but yeah, I feel like there's a lot of things Dave could do. I've seen a lot of really interesting theories, but I definitely agree. Like Balin needs to be recast because it seems like they were setting his character up for something much bigger than just like a side quest. Like it seems like he's going to be pretty integral to the next part of Star Wars.
Yeah, I think when I was watching leading up to the finale, I was like, well, I wonder if he's gonna like unleash something and then like his character will be like consumed by it. And I was like, I hope that's not the case because
Yeah,
just the character itself is so interesting and nuanced. And I think there's a lot of ways they can take it. And I
definitely.
think it's exciting that the whole Mortis thing is kind of open ended, and it gives them some things to play with.
Exactly. Yeah. No, this has been great, Zach. Thank you so much for coming on and giving us an inside look at the theater experience, which I think a lot of us probably heard about but couldn't actually go to. So, hope you had fun on, and I'm excited for a future episode with you with your
Yeah,
Star Wars story.
looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
All right, Jen, welcome back to the show. My sister is joining again, extending her lead on the most podcast appearances. And we are talking about Ahsoka. I am here to hear your overall thoughts throughout the season. I didn't hear from you too often, so that's usually not a good sign. But I know we checked in a couple times, so I want to hear your full, complete thoughts of the Ahsoka series.
I would love to have given my opinion on the Ahsoka series, except it wasn't even about Ahsoka. It was about everyone but Ahsoka. That is my big takeaway from watching this show. The best episodes, of course, were about Ahsoka. The whole episode, World Between Worlds, that could have been, in my opinion, a really good 3-part Jedi Tales arc in animation. Because I feel like at no point other than that were we dealing with Ahsoka internal conflict. At no point was the action pushing forward Ahsoka's personal journey. Everything served either Morgan and her goals, Sabine and her goals, Ezra was there,
Yeah.
Hera was there.
Mhm.
Like, it didn't feel like Ahsoka was the main character. It felt like she was the main character of the best episode,
Mhm.
and that was it. So yeah, that was my overall takeaway from the show.
I think unfortunately that just stems from the fact that this is supposed to be Rebels season 5, and because they had to title it Ahsoka, it gave this impression that the whole show was centered around Ahsoka, and really like Ahsoka wasn't the biggest part of Rebels. She was only in season 2. And
Yeah.
then they made it seem like this was, even though it's a continuation of Rebels, oh, now it's Ahsoka. But we know that's the Disney exec saying we need to bring eyes, so we need to name it Ahsoka. So
Yeah, we need name recognition.
exactly.
What?
Yeah. So I know we're obviously huge fans of animation. What are your feelings on them taking this story to live action? It seems like you would rather have this stayed in the animated realm because we are such big proponents for animation.
Animation, it's just a different way to tell the same story. And when you go to a different medium, you have to ask yourself, what about this medium is going to elevate this story? What about this medium gives more freedom to this story? And the thing that animation gives to any Star Wars story is you're unrestricted by special effects and creativity and physics. The lightsabering in this series was not there. Like, it was just, I felt like the choreography was very stiff. It was not indicative of Ahsoka's level of mastery of that art form. Same thing with Balin. Ezra, I feel like 25 years living with hermit crabs. I feel like
It might have been 10, I think. But yeah, still. Yeah, I think
it doesn't matter. Like, this should have been his like OP off the screen thing. Like, he should have came back and have been like out of this world with the Force. Like, the fact that he he should have been that type of Jedi where like he doesn't even need a lightsaber because he's had nothing to do for 10 years but to focus on the Force. Don't get me started on Sabine not being able to do jack. Then she takes the lightsaber, which is like cool, even though I don't feel like she earned it, because the whole conflict with her connecting with the Force was a spiritual one. And at no point do I feel like she went through any sort of spiritual change that would unlock that ability.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden she goes from a lightsaber, which may weigh like 5 pounds, to a whole ass grown man,
Yeah.
hundreds of feet
Mhm.
up and over. And like, I get it. The point was to show elevation in her ability and to show their trust with each other.
Yeah, I definitely agree with like the whole thing with Ezra. I feel like they very much just skimmed over his time there. Like he was just waiting to be rescued and he was doing nothing.
Mhm.
But I feel like a Jedi stranded would take that time to deepen their connection with the Force. And he was
Yeah.
so Force sensitive with animals. I see that's probably why he picked Hermicrab people, but he was so Force sensitive with Rebels. I just wish, maybe there was more of a connection there. Sabine, it was just like, oh, my master believes in me now. Okay, now I can really call on the Force to this level.
Exactly. So my statement to why animation is just, I feel like it was live action because it was told to be live action. I think it was live action because they want to bring more animation characters into live action, but nothing about the show was like, no, this needed to be in live action. It all could have been done, and I think it would have been elevated by being an animation, just purely because I feel like animation would have given it more freedom. It would
Yeah.
have given more creativity.
And probably more time because that budget would have paid for 16 episodes, not 8.
Yeah.
Whatever they spent.
The best of the effects what took place with the Purgles. I thought the Purgles
Yeah.
looked great
Yeah.
in live action. I think it was great to see them in live action, but other than that, it all felt very mid.
The last thing I'll ask about is Shin and Balin. So we always talk about new characters, and we're always excited about new characters.
I was so excited.
And what did you think about them and the progression of them, and then obviously the maybe underwhelming end to their story here?
I enjoyed them because I feel like Balin was a great antagonist for Ahsoka because he's basically the dark side or version of Ahsoka, where she's neither Jedi nor Sith. She's in the middle, but she definitely leans more to the light side of the Force. And I feel like Balin is the same thing on the opposite. So I feel like they're natural foils for each other. Like they don't want to be a part of the Jedi. They don't want to be a part of the Sith. They want to be something different. And I feel like that was representative by that last shot with him, where we see that the daughter is clearly crumbled and the son is there. So it
Yeah.
kind of gives this implication that Ahsoka is the daughter, possibly Balin is the son in this scenario, and then Anakin would be the father. That would be
Right.
my fan theory. So I think he was interesting. I can see him using this Thrawn element as a vehicle to get him to this planet. So
Mhm.
that makes sense. But I feel like his story ended a couple episodes.
Yeah.
I don't really know why he was hanging around. Like, I feel like once he got to the planet, he should have been like, oh, I'm good. Like, this is where I want it. Like, I used you. I got what you wanted, so I could go here. I'm interested in him as a character. I just don't think he got a good storyline for the last couple episodes. And Shin, awesome. I love her. I think she's so interesting. I love her angstiness.
Yeah.
I just love her like creepy look, and like she's always like I just
Goth girl,
like,
yeah.
yeah, I love the goth girl energy. But once again, like Balin's like, all right, deuces. I don't understand why he was like, okay, you can go back now. Because in that case, I'd have been, if his whole goal was to get to that planet, I don't know why he would have even brought her with him.
And why would he accept the orders to go after Ezra and Sabine? I
Yeah.
think maybe he thought like, oh, I'll give this opportunity to Shin, I'll walk her out there and then be like, okay, I'm leaving, but that I don't think was conveyed very well.
I just didn't understand why she was there if all he was going to do when he got there was tell her to leave.
Right.
So that, for me, that was like, I felt bad for her because I felt like she was just as lost as I was. I was like, bitch, I don't know why you're there either.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No. Yeah.
One of like the 4 lines she's had in like an episode and a half was, if everyone's so eager to leave this planet, shouldn't we? To which case I'm like, at what point did she get her mind changed to decide to not leave the planet? Like, she fights Ezra and Sabine, is given an opportunity to join them with Ahsoka, and she runs away. And then the next time we see her, she's joining the Raiders. And it's like, why didn't you tried to get on the ship out. Like at no point did I get any sort of indication of why she chose to stay. And if she's gonna stay, why wouldn't she be going after Balin? Like, once again, same thing with Balin. I feel like she had a story and I just don't know what happened to it.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'm not sure if it's whether they cut things because of the unfortunate passing of Rey and they kind of just cut it off early, or because you would have to think he had an idea in mind for them, or maybe they're just waiting for next season and they were like, oh, we can't really think of a good ending right now for this season, so we're just going to leave a open-ended ending so it makes next season more enticing to actually explore this stuff. But yeah, you kind of got to do what you set up in the season that you set it up in. So yeah, very unfortunate.
That's how I feel about them.
Yeah, very unfortunate. I unfortunately have to cut this off already, but thank you again for coming on. It's always good to hear all sides of the discussion around the Ahsoka series. And you brought your Mortis shirt, which is now, I guess, going to be very important in live action, which is
Everyone
exciting.
gets to know about Mortis now.
Yeah, which, I mean, we still don't fully understand it, but we think it's cool and it causes a lot of discussion. So, yeah, thank you again, Jen. It's always a pleasure to talk Star Wars. All right, welcome back, Chris. Thanks for coming back on. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on Ahsoka. We only got in touch, I think, 1 or 2 times throughout the season, so I haven't really heard a lot of your thoughts, so I'm really excited to get your overall opinion on the show and how Dave Filoni delivered for you this time.
Happy to be back and discuss the show.
So go ahead. The floor is yours. What did you think of the Ahsoka series in the end as a continuation of Rebels and then a project on its own?
So I think by and large, writ large, I think this was a success. There, I hate being like, to fit that nitpicking cliche. People love saying, "Oh, Star Wars fans always have complaints," but I have little things, but that's going to happen with anything, By and large, I think what Filoni delivered was what I wanted, ranging from the flashback episode, seeing Anakin in the Clone Wars gear, seeing like the Night Sisters, like the witches in live action, finally seeing something like that. Thrawn's return, I think there was and then not just his return, but his character in the show. I think Filoni was good with leading him till the end and not having him like, oh, I've been thwarted again. He didn't really get thwarted. I think he referenced that in one of his interviews before the show dropped. So I like that as well, kind of saving him for the end and not having him be this villain that's kind of beaten throughout the show, like kind of a cliche Star Wars villain. I think by and large, this has delivered what we wanted. And I think it's setting up for, is it the movie there with the Mando movie coming out? Isn't that a thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, Dave Filoni has his movie scheduled. I know that there's talks right now for a season 2 of Ahsoka. It hasn't been confirmed yet, so I don't know how this story is continuing, but yes, the prospects of what could continue are definitely really cool.
My one thing, I was going to say, I would have hated this show if they killed off Thrawn.
Okay,
if they brought him back after all of this, after 5 episodes of nothing, and then he's dead at I would have been extraordinarily pissed. Grade A pissed. So that was my big thing, like my big rule. If this is violated, the show's garbage in my eyes. So they averted that catastrophe because he has so much potential.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding Vader and Sidious, I think Thrawn's the coolest Imperial. I think where they can go with this is Thrawn's the start of the First Order. He might die before it really takes off, but he'll set it in motion, and then he dies, and then that's the First Order. I think I would have had more respect for the First Order as like an antagonist if I had known that Thrawn was involved in its reconfiguration or in its spawning. It would have made more sense because I read about like Lucas had mentioned, like in his depiction, or not his depiction, but in his like how he considered and had the sequel trilogy mapped out. Sidious would return in a sense where clones would keep respawning, and like he had the contingency plan with the Star Destroyers and all this stuff kind of hidden away. So it kind of makes sense that Thrawn was out there in the wings, returned, kind of re-corralled all these former warlords and Imperials, and then launched off the First Order, and then maybe like Mando, banded with Ahsoka, kill him. That'd be a pretty cool way to round out his arc.
Yeah, I think it is a really good way that they end this season with Thrawn getting back to the galaxy and there not being as many main characters standing in his way. So I feel like we can get some really decisive victories against the New Republic because there's not as much plot armor. It's just Hera and the New Republic and Ezra now, obviously making it back. So I think that's really
Agreed.
exciting. Like you said, with the Night Sisters being in live action, I think that's such a really great aspect to bring into live action, especially like that cosmic horror magics kind of thing. I have no idea what they're going to do with it, to be honest.
Me too.
In a good way, but we
Agreed.
have zombie stormtroopers, which is pretty crazy. So having been a fan for a long time of animation, how did you feel about this transition here from animation to live action, and especially seeing the payoff of such a big arc from Clone Wars in this show?
Good question. I would say, yeah, it's a pretty good question. I would say very well performed. Again, there's little issues like I got reminiscent of the scale, like that lack of scale that Kenobi had, that Boba Fett had. It felt smaller and condensed and like kind of trapped in. There were certain episodes that felt like very wide scale, like how like one of the Lucas's films was,
Mm-hmm.
But I think really to get back to your question, I think like seeing the live action of Anakin in the Clone Wars, I was going nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I've wanted that since Disney bought the rights and was delivering live action. I've wanted to see at least a glimpse of Anakin in that sense. And I love seeing like the dark Anakin taking over, and then, seeing the Night Sisters colluding, assisting Thrawn in his return and resurrecting the troopers. And I think there were so many good circle backs to Clone Wars and Rebels with, Ezra's return. And I did like Ezra, they chose correct. And he really gave us that, like an older version of Ezra, almost like a Yoda on Dagobah, kind of this variation a little bit, not as extreme, but it was almost like this, in exile, away from civilization for a pretty long time.
And he was literally with hermit crabs. He was a hermit, like he literally was a hermit.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So I did enjoy that. I think by and large, the Clone Wars animation to live action, those carryovers were very well done.
And how did you feel about the new characters, Baylan and Shin, and where their story ends up, and this introduction of the Mortis gods and what Shin's going to do with the Raiders? I think there's a lot of exciting things going on there. So what were your takes on that?
I found those characters very interesting. I have one issue at the end. I'll get to that. So first, I think really interesting characters, like kind of Dark Jedi, if you want to call them that. Like this variation, not Sith, not Jedi, or former Jedi, but you know what I'm saying, like this kind of hybrid, where they have kind of, like, at least Baylan has greater goals to carry out. I saw this clip, I don't recall where it was from, some Force wielder that wanted to destroy the Force, And I think that kind of goes to Baylan's kind of arc, where I think he wants to try to destroy the wheel, like bring Game of Thrones into this, destroy the wheel, So that's what it's like. I have this feeling that he wants to eliminate the Force completely, and not what's her name? I'm blanking on the apprentice of Baylan.
Shin.
Shin. She wants the the classic Sith desire. At least as of now, that's what it's been portrayed to be: the ambition, that drive, wanting to take control. But Baylan has much broader goals, bigger overarching. My only issue at the end was, to me, I had less problem with Baylan's ending than Shin's ending. Like, her big thing was she wanted power, and to me, just she had time to get back to the Star Destroyer, hop on or something. But to me, it's like she goes to the Raiders. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she has some plans. But I don't know. Taking control of this band of like prehistoric raiders that have no technological capability. They're stuck. To me, it's not really, that's power, sure. That's a degree of power. That's like a big drop off. That's not a promotion. That's not even a lateral promotion of power.
No, I agree with you there. I think we could have gotten a little bit more out of Shin, no matter how much I really enjoyed their characters. I think, where their story ends, I wish we got a little bit more about her backstory and what she ultimately wants. Power seems pretty basic. I think she's a little bit deeper than that. So,
Right.
Yeah.
It's like there's a few instances where it's like, Baylan turns, like, your ambition's driving you one direction, I'm going the other. So I don't mean to say it's some superfluous or some shallow motive. Sidious's goal was power. It's like he was a deep character. All that explanation sounds shallow. I think, listen, you could be completely right. I could be totally wrong. But from what I gather, just from, again, that could be a lack of elaboration into her backstory, into more screen time, getting more into their heads. But just from what I've gathered, Baylan had those really deep, again, like the Mortis gods wanting to destroy the wheel. that's much deeper than I think what we've gathered from Shin. This desire for power to wield the dark side, like choking out what's her name?
That was Sabine, yeah.
Sabine, yeah. I got enough in my head right now. All law school memorizing.
I was gonna say, yeah.
The character names escape me, but sometimes that's where I've gathered. I think you could be totally right, but I think there's. I just wish they gave us a little bit more to explain. I get Balin, but Shin just for some reason didn't sit well with me.
Yeah,
going to just to be a raider god,
Yeah, we'll see where they pick up with the next story. It seems like she'll kind of be that main antagonistic force for Ahsoka and Sabine, at least while they're stranded there. But Chris, I wish we could talk more about this on the podcast, but this has been awesome. I hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you again for coming on.
Happy to be here anytime.
All right. Hello, Kyle and Cole. Welcome back to the podcast. Good friends of the podcast, possibly best friends in real life. Who knows? But we're here talking about the Ahsoka series. So excited to jump right into this and talk to you guys about what you thought of the series. Cole, we talked pretty much every week about Ahsoka and broke down all of our theories and thoughts. Kyle, I don't really think I've heard your thoughts on the series at all. So really excited to dive into this. Cole, I think I'm going to let Kyle go first since I have an idea of what you think of the series. So, Kyle, the floor is yours.
Ooh. So you mentioned this before we started, Mark, but it's a little bit unique, my perspective, I feel like, because I watched Clone Wars, but I have not seen Rebels. And so you were curious about how it all kind of came together for me as someone who is unfamiliar with Rebels. I guess I'll start by saying if I had to rate the entire series out of 10, I think I would sit it around like a 7.7.
It's pretty solid, yeah.
So, for perspective, the Mandalorian seasons sit around the high 7s, low 8s, I think. And then like Book of Boba Fett is like in the 6s for me. So Ahsoka's sitting pretty good. I think it was sitting pretty in the 8s up until the last couple episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do think that I might have missed a little bit by not having watched Rebels, but I knew how Rebels ended, and that kind of helped. My connection to some of the characters might not have been as meaningful. Someone like Hera, I had never seen before. And I didn't even really know much of her role in Rebels. I knew who Ezra Bridger was. And of course, I know who Ahsoka is because of Clone Wars. But if I hadn't known how Rebels ended, and I just knew it from, seeing clips and things online, but I imagine I probably would have not understood what was going on because they don't really give the whole, like, how Thrawn got banished backstory, at least not that much.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoyed it a lot. I don't feel like I'm missing anything out of the characters now that I know them. Obviously, it's a huge shame that we're not going to see much more of Balin Skull. I thought he was one of the highlights of the whole series.
Big time.
Ray Stevenson was commanded everybody's attention whenever he was on the screen. I think I wish they would have explored his character a little bit more this season instead of kind of leaving it for. I'm sure they had plans for him in the upcoming seasons, but I think Ahsoka as a whole, like I said, 7.7 out of 10. I enjoyed it a lot, even though I might be missing some things as someone who hadn't watched Rebels, but having watched Clone Wars definitely helped a ton.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the big part of the series with Ahsoka and Anakin was really more predicated on Clone Wars knowledge, so that's good that you had that going in, and I'm glad to hear that, this didn't limit you too much. Does it make you want to go back and watch Rebels now having seen this?
I'm kind of torn.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's a lot that Rebels has to offer, but knowing the plot of the show and knowing how Rebels ended, I don't know if I'm like itching to go back and see everything that happened in between.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm, just from the accolades that Rebels has gotten from you, Mark, and a bunch of other people who have been on the show, it's always been something that I kind of wanted to go back and revisit.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because I talk to people, and a lot of people haven't seen Rebels that are now into Ahsoka, so just curious if this show kind of piques the interest. But yeah, me and Cole are huge advocates for Rebels, and I think a lot of the moments in Rebels are up there with the best in Star Wars. So Cole, I know you've been patiently waiting to get your thoughts off on Ahsoka to a broader audience than just me. So floor is yours. What did you think of Ahsoka as a whole?
As a whole, honestly, I think Kyle kind of put it in a good perspective. I think it sits at that super high 7, maybe that low 8, just depending on your subjective take of it. I think subjectively for me, it probably crossed like an 8-1, 8-2 type deal. Just or like I said, subjective perspective. But objectively, I think as far as like TV goes, I give it like a 7-8 as well. I think the first 3 episodes are not a slow burn. Like Andor was a slow burn. I think this was required patience with an excellent payoff given the middle point of the season, which was incredible. I think 1, 2, and 3 did the job. I think 4 through 6 were close to masterful. And I think that the last 2 served their purpose, but as far as their roles in the season, they definitely fell short, which that in conjunction with following such heavy hitters in 4, 5, and 6, it just takes the wind out of your sails a little bit. But overall, I really enjoyed the show. I think it was a show that Star Wars fans needed. I know there's a lot of division in it right now, but it's division maybe as to the trajectory of the show. Where's it going? What's going to happen with certain characters and differences of opinions there. I know a lot of people didn't like it. I know a lot of people thought it was fan service in particular. But I think the divisiveness is good in regards to, or in comparison to the divisiveness we've had with shows like Andor, Obi-Wan, so on and so forth. There's a lot less disappointment that came from this show, and I'm super happy with it. Like I said, I just think in all, you see the ambition Dave Filoni has, but I think you also see his flaws in the live action, medium, given, just the certain faults that Ahsoka had that I think are pretty objective given the Star Wars content we've gotten with shows like Andor and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we do have to, agree that Dave Filoni hasn't been all hits throughout his career. Even in Clone Wars and Rebels, there were some lower points. And unfortunately, in live action, there's going to be more eyes on it. So it's going to be tougher to get away with some of those things that maybe you got away with animation. I do want to ask you, Cole, what is your opinion or thoughts on seeing this season of Ahsoka more as a animated Rebel season 5? Where do you kind of sit in that conversation? Would you have rather seen it in animation, or are you kind of okay with what we got in the live action medium and you actually think it enhanced the story?
I think this particular story, conjoining with Ezra and Thrawn, I think it would have been better served in animation. I think you could have had a separate Ahsoka arc in her show, and maybe if you have the animated bridge of the Ezra and Thrawn story before Ahsoka's, maybe you have them lead into it, whatever. But to answer your question, I think animation definitely would have been the way to go, because I think the live action required a lot more plot armor than what you typically would have needed with animation, just due to budget cuts, production, anything type of deal. Like for example, it's hard to have someone do so much in live action compared to animation. For me, it's something that stands out in particular is in the final fight with Morgan and Ahsoka, when they get right to the very top of that structure that they're fighting on. All the troopers are like, all right, get it.
Yeah.
Why did we stop shooting now?
Yeah, right.
There was even a pause. So things that you can avoid in animation that you don't take away from the story.
Sure.
So that, yeah.
Definitely. I wonder what would have happened though. Like, so of course it looks like they're building towards some kind of climactic event where you have a crossover between the other live action series. I wonder how it would unfold if we had like The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett that are all live action, but then you also have Ahsoka that's animated, and how do you weave that into this epic climax at the end?
Oh yeah,
if part of it's live action and part of it's cartoon.
Yeah, I think they definitely wrote themselves into a corner. I think it kind of falls back to just Lucasfilm not always having a long-term plan and kind of just throwing stuff at the wall and being like, oh, we should do a Boba Fett show. Okay. Can we put Ahsoka and Luke in that? I get. Okay, we're putting Ahsoka.
Let's give him a whole episode.
Okay, all right, fine. Yeah, so
a lot of Chiefs, not a lot of Indians. A lot of Chiefs, not a lot of Indians, I think.
Yeah. Native Americans.
as I was.
So what are you guys hoping for? You know, there is a lot of cliffhangers at the end. I think we kind of all know what our favorite parts of the show were, you know, mostly that middle part with Ahsoka. But what are you most looking forward to in the future for the Ahsoka story between Balin standing on the Mortis gods, Shin uniting those marauders, and Ahsoka being stranded, Thrawn being in a new galaxy? What are you most looking forward to or theorizing? Kyle, I'll go with you first.
I don't know if there's like something specific that I'm looking forward to. I'm more curious than anything because, like you mentioned, you have now you have Sabine and Ahsoka stranded a whole galaxy away from everybody else, and we know that eventually, some way, they have to make it back because they have to be part of this major event at the end. I'm very curious to see how they make that happen. Of course, that plan, I'm sure, is having to be rewritten now.
Yeah.
Because of the loss of Ray Stevenson. I don't know what they're planning on doing with the Balin Skull character. I'm sure there was an entire storyline. Maybe the entire season 2 was going to be them in this faraway galaxy, figuring out how to get back. But yeah, I'm curious to see how they restructure this plan and how they go about. Of course, they have an end point in mind, but how do you get there?
How about you, Cole?
I think they're really going to push forward for the Mortis gods. I think that's going to be, and obviously, as Kyle just mentioned, with the loss of Ray Stevenson, however they go about Balin Skull, whoever comes into that role, if they go with a recast, I would not want to be in their position, but I, like you said, wish them the best of luck. I really do hope they deep dive into that. And me personally, I think that what we're going to find from that Mortis arc, whether it comes from Ahsoka or Balin, whatever, I believe it's going to be the long-term big bad that's going to take place in the movies to come. So it's not essentially, no matter what, it ends at the sequels. You know what I mean? So we'll know the ending before it happens. I think because we're filling in so many gaps, it's going to be a placeholder for what's to come after that time. So there's a bigger payoff to us, the viewer, instead of, hey, watch this, even though you know what the end goal is with the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, I think it would be cool to have another huge adversary other than Thrawn, you know, more mystical adversary. I know there's some theories about, you know, Abeloth. I know that is such a deep cut in Star Wars lore that I only know about because of YouTube videos, but I know that's a lot of theories out there. Yeah, I'm curious to see how deep Dave goes in the direction of the Mortis gods and everything. And thank God you watched Clone Wars, Kyle, because God, that would be so confusing.
What a robbery! I must say, I know it's approaching that, but what a robbery for people who didn't see the Mortis arc. Like the feeling of seeing that Rushmore essentially of the Mortis gods and the Sith and the daughter being cut out. It's just it's just everything. It was cool. That was fulfilling. Again, I felt that was more fulfilling than fan service, because it's something to come later with the content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I didn't know what those statues were.
I did not pay attention in Clone Wars.
It's been a while since I saw Clone Wars.
Yeah, the Mortis gods. It's pretty wild. We'll see what they do with that. Kyle, were you upset that they didn't use any Revenge of the Sith score for Anakin?
I always am. Every time. I know that, like, Mark, you and I raved about the I forget who recreated it, but somebody took the Darth Vader versus Obi-Wan fight from the finale of that show and they re-scored it with the Revenge of the Sith soundtrack, and it was
so good.
It was awesome. It was kind of cool as someone who hadn't seen Rebels to hear some of the motifs from the Rebels score. Again, it was totally new to me, but I thought it was really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just know that once we saw Anakin in the Revenge of the Sith outfit, I just really wanted to hear Battle of the Heroes or Anakin's betrayal, even just for a brief moment, just a little something, just a little callback.
Just put it in that, put in the background. How about seeing the Clone Wars armor in live action?
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was a nice touch. That was a nice touch. I was like, wow, that's really cool. And I'm like, there's no way they could do it. They could have done this in animation, like the Clone Wars show in live action. I'm just like, there's no way. It would have
Yeah.
been way over the top.
I mean, you saw they had to like fog it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The brevity of what we got from that was perfect because they put everything they had into those glimpses. So I think that was, I will say, out of the pocket, or I don't know if it's out of pocket, but I do think we will see Sam Witwer as the son.
Yes. Yeah, I would love to see that. I think he deserves a live action appearance in Star Wars finally after all of these voiceovers.
And I think being the embodiment of the dark side balance portion of it would be the closest thing to Star Killer we can get for Sam Witwer. So it's perfect.
Red Lightning would be cool on screen too. I liked his Red Lightning in Mortis.
It's valid as well.
And yeah, so we have to wrap up. Unfortunately, this has been a lot of fun. Cole, you had one last thing you wanted to mention. You thought there was too many female protagonists in the show, correct?
Yes, correct.
Too many head tails.
Too many head tails.
Too many head tails.
Too many female protagonists. I was like, Cole, you can't bring that up, and you were very adamant about bringing that up. So I
saw it on the teleprompter provided by Market Balance LLC.
Now hold on. Hold on. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys for coming on, and hope you had a good time.
Always. Thank you, Mark.
Mark, it's always a pleasure. Thanks, man. Thanks for letting me, spew my unwarranted and invalid opinions to people who don't want to hear it.
And bigoted opinions about female protagonists. Yes.
Unbelievable,
Naturally.
Figure it out.
Thanks, guys.
Mommy Mothma.
Oh, yes. Don't talk about my queen like that. All right. What's up, B-Figs? Welcome back to the podcast. And I am excited to hear your full thoughts on the Ahsoka series. So the floor is yours. What were your overall takeaways from this season? What were you really excited about?
Well, thanks for having me. There was a lot of good, some things to critique on but overall it was to me, it was a fun every Tuesday at 9:00 to just tune in, and which I loved that they were releasing them at 9:00. It was something to look forward to instead of just going on lunch break and watching it. So I had to force myself to watch it on TV instead of my phone. But it was a good ride, and I guess we'll see where they go forward with it. Some high points of it was, getting to see these actresses and actors in live action represent these animated characters that we grew up with. I think overall they did a fantastic job. Like I think Sabine, I'm terrible with remembering actor and actresses' names.
No worries.
And Rosario Dawson and Ray Stevenson and all that. But I feel like they did a really good job with bringing them to live action. Like I feel a character that I've loved and also pissed me off sometimes, but that's just the way the character was like Sabine. Is like you would get mad at her for like certain choices she made, but like the actress just played her so well. Ray Stevenson just plays an awesome Balin Skull. Like it was just rest in peace to the guy because but like he was fantastic with what script he had, you know what I mean? So I enjoyed that. There were certain parts of the show that like I guess the pace of how they were going about it, especially towards the end, kind of had me a little wanting more, I guess. But again, I'm not the type of person that's going to critique everything because I don't really know film like that. I just go and experience it for the fun.
Sure.
But for those that are like deep dive into it, I can understand them being like, well, you should have done this way and this way. You should have done that way.
I'm getting the subtweet. I'm getting the subtweet here.
No.
Okay.
but overall, like I had a good experience with it. I really like the growth that Ahsoka has through it. Where at first she's just frustrated with Sabine once they get back together, and then she has to go through her experience with her master and kind of get over the guilt that she had, which allows her to grow. And then, she takes on this role towards the end. And I really liked that. I think it was cool seeing Ezra and Sabine and Ahsoka all together. So it was our first time seeing him since, so it was really cool. And then Thrawn,
of course.
I was very excited for him in live action, and I think he was good. Of course, he was only in the last 3 episodes or 2 or 3 episodes, but do I wish we got more? Absolutely. But he did good with what they gave us. So we'll see going forward whether there's a season 2 or if it continues into the movie that Dave Filoni is supposed to have. But no, I liked it, but there were certain things that were just driving me nuts during the week. Like I would talk to my coworker about it because him and I were following it together, and like we would be saying all the good things, and then we'd be like, what? And
Well,
there's one little thing that the one comment that you'll have to talk about, and then it ends up rolling into like a snowball effect, and you start talking about all the other things that got you annoyed.
mhm.
But it was a fun ride. I think my favorite part was oh, and hold up really quick before
Yeah, no,
sorry.
go for it. Go,
It was
go.
nice seeing Hera too, because
Yeah, Hera. Yeah.
seeing her as like I wish she had a little more, but even then in the beginning she didn't get a lot, but towards like the middle part of it, she had her own parts of it, which was cool. And I really like that, like, even though the show was called Ahsoka, it focused a lot on like other characters as well. It
Mhm.
wasn't just single focused on like, you know how for The Mandalorian in the first two seasons it was like just Din
Yeah.
and the child. You kind of get to know the characters a little more too, especially for those that like didn't watch the animated series.
Yeah.
It kind of at least gets you to understand them a little bit, not fully, but enough to where you can enjoy it. And I think they
Definitely.
did a good job to where if you didn't watch the show, you could still the shows you could still enjoy the live action.
Mhm. And so, yeah, you're a huge fan of Clone Wars and Rebels, and obviously your favorite character is Darth Vader. So I am curious, what did you think of Anakin not only coming back as Clone Wars Anakin, but also we saw like unmasked Darth Vader.
Yeah, I was trying not to just jump into that because that's the first thing I was gonna just
Oh yeah,
shoot
go,
off of.
go.
Oh my gosh, let me tell you, I was so excited because you kind of had an idea that Anakin was going to show up. That's her master. You know what I mean? She walked away, but that was her master for so many seasons. So it was really cool to get that interaction together. And like she says, I'm gonna butcher the quote or whatever. She's like, too old or don't have enough in you or anything left in you. And
Yeah,
he said, as I taught you everything, yeah, just slices her down. She starts falling into the first flashback, which
yeah,
I thought was really cool. Like Hayden Christensen being like the Clone Wars version of Anakin, I thought it was actually really good. And I didn't know how they would pull that off because, we have an attachment to an animated version of him as well.
yeah.
But I think he did a really good job. And then seeing Vader, no unmasked, like Vader just unleashed, and then he goes, "What does he say? You lack conviction or
Yes,
something like that."
exactly.
And that was just tough because like you could hear like the Vader cracking inside as he's just walking through this, and he's phasing from regular like unmasked to Darth Vader himself. So I was geeking the entire.
Yeah,
I was geeking, and it was just like I'm being quiet at home because it's late, and my
sure.
parents are in my room. Let's go. Like I was just having a real good time. But that part was really cool, and I think the ending of this show was really cool because I don't obviously we don't know if there's a season 2 or not.
Mhm.
If there is, it's going to be pretty cool. I mean, if they don't go the movie route or they go animated, which honestly might, I probably would rather that season 2. Nothing against the live action, but like I feel like that would be cool if we got like an animated version of that. But what they can do with that, I feel like can be really good.
Yeah, there's a lot of threads that they can pull on. Balin and Shin, what did you think about these new characters, and especially, where they end off with the Mortis God statues and then Shin kind of going to those like marauders again? What did you think of them throughout the season and then their ending?
I loved their dynamic. I think it was you could tell Shin wanted one thing, and Balin was on like another, I guess, another journey, and obviously they split ways. And gotta love our emo goth girls.
Oh
with,
yeah, we can fix her, Brandon. We can fix
yes,
her.
absolutely. But I really like these characters. Like throughout the series, they were likable villains or dark Jedi, what they're called. Like they were just so likable. Obviously, with Balin, it's going to be challenging to overcome that. But with Shin, like I hope we have another encounter with her and Ahsoka, or her and Sabine. I hope they dive more into them and they don't just stop them.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's so much to explore there in their backstories. So, yeah, thank you again for coming on. Hope you had a good time, Brandon. It's always good to have you back on the podcast, and always appreciate the support and posting my stuff on the stories. It's really great to see, and it's always a fuel that I need to keep going. So I appreciate it, and hope you had a good time on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, bro.
All right, Troy, welcome back to the podcast. I think extending you to probably the number 2 spot of most appearances on the podcast, so you should probably be very proud of that. But today we're talking Ahsoka, so excited to hear your thoughts on the series. I know we talked throughout every week. We gave each other our thoughts, but excited to hear your full package idea of what you thought of the series as a whole.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here. It has been a minute. Always love talking Star Wars, so it's been a minute, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, honestly, I really, really enjoyed Ahsoka. I thought start to finish, it was good. I think there were times where it was great, and I really thought we were going to have like one of the better shows in general, not just Star Wars. But it did that. That second to last episode really took a lot of the wind out of the sails, in my opinion, at least. But I thought overall, I really enjoyed it. I was a big fan.
And what did you think about the transition from animation to live action? We had a lot of characters from Rebels, Clone Wars, even with some of those flashbacks coming to live action for the first time. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I will say at first I wasn't thrilled about it. I wasn't a big fan of Sabine in live action, not because of the actress herself, but I just felt that her character portrayed such like a badass Mandalorian in the animation because of the voice actress that played her, and that transition into the live action, she didn't like look the part as much, in my opinion. I thought she grew on me a lot as we first, but like my first initial impression was like, not a big fan. I think the more I see Ahsoka in live action, the more I love Rosario Dawson's portrayal of her. I think she's a perfect, more mature version of the one we see in Clone Wars. Ezra, I loved. I know I told you that from the beginning. I was like, I actually love the actor that had played him. I thought he was such a perfect display of a grown-up live action version of the character that we last saw. That was awesome. And then the flashbacks, I mean, those were unreal in my opinion. I love seeing Anakin and Ahsoka's interactions, that we don't necessarily always see. Yeah, I was a big fan of that, and I think the actress that played the younger Ahsoka in the flashbacks as well was fantastic.
Yeah, you sent me that she was the young Gamora too. So this actress is just like killing it at being younger version of these characters.
The only thing that was weird in live action was like seeing like Rex and the clones, because I guess like in I didn't realize this, but in episode 2 they were all CGI clones.
Yeah, crazy, right?
I didn't realize that. You couldn't even tell. But in this one, it's like, oh yeah, you could tell that's a dude in a suit. Like, it's like, all right, dude.
Definitely more noticeable, and definitely makes me happy that the Clone Wars was animated in full and not all live action clones.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I agree that Sabine, I think, was, abrasive for a lot of people, and I think, that's her character in Rebels, but I guess we were hoping that maybe she had matured a bit more since the end of Rebels. But yeah, I agree with you on all those fronts. I think Ezra, that was the best version of Ezra we've seen.
Yeah, no doubt.
What did you think of Thrawn making the debut? We still have the same voice actor playing him in live action, but what did you think of Thrawn on the big screen?
I think the biggest thing was the fact that it was the same voice actor was what made it. Like I think his voice in Rebels, the subtleness, the like never raising his voice at all, but still portraying that fear and that aura of I'm better than you. I know what I'm doing. I know what you're gonna do before you do it. Like the voice itself was the biggest thing for me. I think that's really what made his character. I didn't think he looked like anything special. Like he just looked like a guy that was painted blue. Like,
blue guy. Yeah.
But the fact that it was the voice, like it played out, so it was perfect in my opinion. The voice is what made it. The voice is what was needed. That was really all I needed for Thrawn in live action.
Yeah, I think it's important because he is an overseer of battle. Like he's not someone that's in battle all the time, so I think his voice has to be perfect. What did you think of the new characters we got? I know Morgan Elsbeth we had seen in season 2 of Mandalorian, but she had a bigger role here. And then of course we have Shin and Baylan, who are a lot of people's favorite part of the series. So what did you think of the new characters?
Yeah, to just skip over Morgan for a minute. I think Baylan and Shin were awesome. It's a shame that I would have loved to see their story end at the end of season 1, especially like after knowing like what happened with Ray passing away. Man, they were so good. I thought their interactions were so great until he was just like, all right, I know what you want. Yeah, get out of here, kid. You don't want no part of what I'm doing. So it was kind of, it was different. I wish we could kind of see more like where Ray was going to take this character. I do have faith that they're going to find someone good to replace him. It's not going to be the same. I do hope they finish his story though. Like I hope they don't just kill him off. Like you got to finish that storyline, with him standing in the hand of the father. at the end, like that's something that's got to be explored. We can't just move past that.
Yeah, it's like such a big thing to reveal, and obviously it seems like it was setting up something even bigger
Yeah.
that might affect stuff in the known galaxy. So, what did you think of Mortis being brought into live action and now being kind of a central idea moving forward in Star Wars?
I like it a lot. I don't necessarily know if this has anything to do with it, but I know, I guess, like George Lucas's vision was like anyone can use the Force, and I think the fact that Sabine ended up being able to pull from it, to find that ability to use the Force and to help Ezra, I think that's just the Mortis gods coming into this. I think that's just going to play a huge role in things moving forward. I like it a lot. I'm curious to see where it goes, especially because a lot of people have said, there's theories on who's technically supposed to be the father, who's supposed to be, the son, and then obviously it's supposed to be Ahsoka being the embodiment of the daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be a really cool thing to explore. And it seems like that's like where Balin wanted to go, is he wanted to be, the father, where he basically oversees the Force, is kind of my opinion on it. I don't necessarily know if that's exactly right, but I love that there's so many different theories about where that can go, and I like that we're going to explore that, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you think you're kind of in the camp that because they're on this world that seems to be this kind of Force-centric world with the Mortis gods and everything, you think that kind of plays into Sabine being able to use the Force so easily?
It's not necessarily that the world is what did it, but I feel like we've always had those kind of things where we thought Sabine could kind of tap into it, just through her arc in Rebels, like spending time with Ezra. It seems like the more people spend around, like, the more non-Force users spend around Force users, whether they're Jedi or not, it helps them tap into it. And I don't think this was the first time, Sabine had really been trying to harness it. And I think she probably had that potential, but because she was trying to use the Force in the wrong way, she could never do it. So I think, like, just talking to Ezra and having an understanding of like how he's so calm even after being away from everyone for so long, I just think it all kind of helped her pull from it. I don't necessarily think it was easy for her, but definitely from what we see on the screen, yeah, it's like, it took her 5 episodes to be like, oh yeah, I can use the Force.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I like the way you put it with being around Force users, being around like that thought process and how they live their lives might be able to kind of rub off on people. So I think that's cool. But I know some people, that was a theory out there that, people said she was drawing from the power of the world, but I don't know. That's kind of shaky, but I was curious if you were thinking that as well. But yeah, no, this has been great, Troy. Sorry I have to cut us off because of time, but right. This has been awesome. I hope you had a good time, getting your thoughts off on Ahsoka.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you being on here. And yeah, of course, I mean, we could go on forever, but
sure.
This is perfect. It got my thoughts out there. Like we said before, there were no real YouTube theories of where we're going next.
I know, so the YouTube theory guy.
This is perfect. I'm happy that, you had me on here, and I definitely look forward to anything else in the future.
Yeah, no, definitely we'll be doing stuff in the future. But yeah, no, it kills me. I got to cut off all these great conversations I've been having with all the people in the Star Wars community. But can't have a 5-hour podcast. So thanks again, Troy, for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mark.
All right, Darian, welcome back to the podcast. As if we haven't talked about Ahsoka enough together on your media network. If you guys have not listened to those conversations, please do. I have them linked in my bio and in all of my stories whenever they're released. But Darian, we're going to talk about Ahsoka again on my podcast.
That's all right. Let's do it, man. I'm into it.
Yeah, it's been an awesome collaboration. So what did you think of Ahsoka overall as a series?
So overall, I think that it was a decent season of television. I don't think it was anything that was unbelievably magnificent. I think it had its moments in individual episodes. I don't think it was the worst thing ever, but I definitely think there were moments that we talked about even on our show on Cinema Wave. Like, there are aspects that you're expecting more to happen, and then it kind of lets itself down with the writing. I think as someone who didn't see any of the animated stuff prior, whether that be Rebels or Clone Wars, I think the concept of Ahsoka being two things at once, one being a standalone live action series for audience members like me and reestablishing characters or reintroducing them for the first time, and two being a continuation of canonized storytelling from one medium to the other. That's like a tall task that I haven't really fully wrapped my head around until having time to kind of let things breathe. So over the last week or so that it's been since the finale aired, I have sat with that, and I'm just like, I do think it should be applauded how difficult that is for Filoni to have done something like that. But having said that, I think, like I said, there were really great moments of pacing in individual episodes. And I think the issue that I had mostly, I don't know if you felt similar. I think we talked a little bit about it, but I think the writing and the tonal shifts of characters were what really kept the show kind of up and down in terms of like, oh, my expectations are all the way up here for this episode, and then they drop, and then they go all the way up here, and then there's moments within episodes that are encapsulated, and you're like, this was awesome, and then the whole next scene, as soon as they cut away, it's like, what the hell just happened there? So that was, like I said, I think tonality and writing were what kind of made the show lack. But I know you're not in the business of giving ratings, but I give it a 7.5, which to me is it's a pretty good series, honestly.
Yeah, it still definitely delivered that Star Wars feeling, which I think we talked about throughout, that even though, the writing towards the end, the pacing towards the end felt a little rushed and maybe fell into the Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Mando season 3, I still think at the end of the day, compared to those seasons, it was much more Star Wars-esque, and it made me excited for the future, even in the end. So I want to kind of move on to new characters. What did you think of Shin and Balin? I know these are all technically new characters to you, but
I had this actually written out when you said we were going to talk, because I wanted to specifically point out, I think that part of what was hard for me was how I felt that the two characters, ironically enough, that there were moments of struggle as a viewer, were probably your two lead characters in Ahsoka and Sabine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was really hard, because at the same time you have different actors playing these roles that have become iconic from other actors, voice actors, and they're also, like, correct me if I'm wrong, they're maturing and they're progressing into different versions of these characters. Like when you start with Ahsoka, she's a teenager. And now Rosario is playing this older version of Ahsoka over time, and Sabine is learning things along the way. But I did notice that with Shin and Balin in particular, even though they had less screen time, so to speak, you could see that Filoni was able to mold these characters in such a way. They were, to me, the standouts of the series. And I've talked, I love Hu Yang, so Hu Yang stand out to me. I just love droids. But Balin and Shin in particular, and their relationship, their characters were something that by the time we got to episode 6, I was really, really intrigued to see how they were going to wrap things up with them. And then when they drop the ball and you literally do not see them until the ending montage of the finale, that's a moment where I'm like, damn, man, like, what are you going to do? And again, we've talked about this at length too, Ray Stevenson being gone. I do think you have to recast the character, but at the same time, it's like, now is it going to be as fulfilling if it's not even the same person playing the role? So
yeah,
I think in terms of new characters, they brought a lot to the Star Wars galaxy. I'm really, really interested to see how they continue on with them, whether it's in the season 2, or if we see versions of their characters in the movie that Filoni's making, or other television series or other movies. I'm interested to see these characters kind of carry on, where I didn't necessarily have that same feeling, unfortunately, with like Boba Fett at the end of Book of Boba Fett. Like,
exactly.
I think these characters are ones that are established and they feel like Star Wars. So I'm interested to see what happens with them, and see if Rosario and Natasha can kind of grow into their characters a little bit as they start to kind of have more room to play as the seasons and the stories kind of go along in the galaxy.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that like new characters are accepted very well in Star Wars, when Disney doesn't rely on legacy characters, and they push forward with new characters like in Andor, like in this series with Shin and Balin. I think that's not a coincidence that works, and people are craving new characters.
And I think really good storytellers, sorry to cut you off.
No,
really
you're good.
Writers and really good storytellers like Filoni, like Gilroy, are able to interweave these new characters in a way that feels organic and it feels natural. And I do think that in the moments with Shin and Balin in particular, when you balance them out within Ahsoka, they fit the series, and it fits the story going forward, even though it centers around Ahsoka Tano.
Yeah, they're good foils for Ahsoka and Sabine's relationship, so I think it works really well. I do want to end on the Grand Admiral, Thrawn himself. What did you think of Thrawn as someone who had been hearing about him and he's been hyped up so much? What did you think of Thrawn?
So I like Thrawn's portrayal, and I thought that methodical, sort of quiet nature that he brought was different than things that we've seen in Star Wars as of late, or at least in the history of Star Wars, really, right? Like, Vader is a whole icon within itself, and Kylo is a great character, but there's so much outward to Kylo and who he is as a character. Thrawn is one that I've heard about for so long, especially my friends that watch all the animated shows, and from you, we've had conversations about him. But I thought part of the reason I think his character really worked for me, also going back to something I just said, but like there's a through line with Lars playing that character.
Yep.
And it didn't feel like there were like growing pains with him. It felt like he just kind of, again, just seeped himself into the character, even though I'm sure there's a difficulty, right? We're going from just doing voice recording, then immersing yourself in blue makeup.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
On set every day.
Yeah.
But I thought that I'm really excited to see more with his character. I know we've had conversations where it got a little too formulaic with him towards the end because of how little time we had with him. He doesn't get introduced until like the back half of the season. So I wanted to see more from him, but I don't know if that's necessarily a performance thing. I think that I thought that Thrawn as a character was really enticing and just the shadowy figure that I really want to learn more about. And I'm excited, similar to like Stellan Skarsgård's character in Andor. Like I have a feeling, I mean, he's most likely not going to make it out, but like I want to see so much more with him. Like I felt similarly to Thrawn, and I'm excited to see what happens moving forward with him, and now being back in sort of the main course of everything, and see him interact with people like Syndulla and other characters like that. So
yeah, he's back. I'm excited to see what he does in the known galaxy. But this has been great, Darian. Thank you again for coming on, only adding to our catalog of conversations about the Ahsoka series, but it's been fun, man.
Yeah, bro. Thank you, man. I appreciate having me on.
Phew. All right. Yeah, that was a lot, but I hope you guys enjoyed all the different discussions I had with so many of you guys, and looking forward to continue collaborating with the community and friends with this podcast. So if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on whatever streaming service you're listening to this on. Follow me on Instagram at @star_wars_mark of balance for all updates on new episodes and content such as that. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the force be with you. Peace.